with basketball season right around the corner, I thought it would be fun to talk about a video game that is one of my all-time favorites, and it's the favorites of many gamers when it comes to basketball. That game is NBA Jam. Now, me personally, I spent countless hours playing this game in the arcade on my old Super Nintendo back in the day. And NBA Jam, it hit arcades back in 1993. That is 30 years ago. And look, you can't think of the game without hearing in your head the iconic calls like "He's on Fire" or "Boom Shakalaka" from a voice actor, Tim Kitzrow. Well, today we're going to talk about the 30th anniversary of the game, the future of NBA Jam, and much more with the legend himself, the woman only, Tim Kitzrow. Tim, thanks for joining me. So glad to have you here. You see the game. He's holding up right there. When the game goes away, you will see Mr. Kitzrow.
Welcome to Tournament Edition, NBA Jam, Boom Shakalaka. Hey, Dexter, how are you?
That was great, man. That was great. You don't even
Thanks
understand.
for that nice intro. And it's funny. I love to hear people do my own lines. So, shout out to you for tackling the Boom Shakalaka, and he's heating up.
I tried. I didn't want to put too much inflection on it because I didn't want to make it. I can't mess up what you do. That's your lane. You're so good at that. But I want to tell you, one, it's an honor to be able to talk to you as somebody who is a huge NBA Jam fan. It's a pleasure. I never thought I'd be talking to you here, but here we are. I'm glad. And Tim, I want to get started with this because you've been doing voice acting work for years. But can you tell us about how it came to be with you doing the play-by-play calls for NBA Jam?
Well, it was kind of an accidental sidetrack for my acting career. I was classically trained as an actor at Purchase College, where the New York Knicks used to work out. And I came to Chicago to pursue Second City. My real love was comedy. I loved doing stage work. I worked in LA, I'd worked in New York, upstate New York. But Second City was something I'd always wanted to do. So I came out here. And in the middle of doing all of the actory things, which is going out for auditions and pursuing that, I got in a little weekend rock and roll band. I played drums, and I just wanted to keep that as a part of a creative force in my life, no matter what else happened. And interestingly enough, one of the guys in the band happened to work out at Williams Pinball Factory that makes the great pinball games. And he said, "Man, we need a guy who can do Mr. Howell for a Gilligan's Island pinball game. You're an actor. What do you think?" And I went, "Gilligan, maybe we could drive Kona. Oh, Lovey, where's Teddy?" And that was enough to get me in the door. And each week it seemed like they would ask me for a new voice, the Twilight Zone, Popeye, etc. So I sort of became their go-to guy in the voiceover department. So when NBA Jam was being made across the street at Midway Games, they came to me and said, "Hey, I think you'd be great for this game." So here I am 30 years later.
Wow, and you were great for the game. Absolutely great for the game at all. We know about your iconic voice with this game. And we know that NBA Jam, it's an over-the-top 2-on-2 hoops game. But one of the things I've always wanted to know is how did you come up with some of the over-the-top phrases, right? You talked about Boom Shakalaka, "He's on Fire." Were you writing them down before you recorded them? Did you have a whole list of random catchphrases? And what was the motivation for you once you stepped in the booth and started recording?
It's a great question, and Dexter, I'll bet anybody who's old enough to remember the great basketball in the 90s, if you watch TV, there was really only one voice. It was kind of the voice of God in the NBA. It was Marv Albert. So I watched religiously. I was watching basketball, for years and years, the Lakers-Celtics series, the 80s when I was in Los Angeles, the finals. I played basketball sometimes 4 or 5 times a week at the Y or outside. So I was just living and breathing basketball my whole life. So like any kid in the backyard, I'd have to hit 3 swishes in a row before I could come in for dinner. I would have to call the last play of the game like every kid, or hit a home run. When you're a kid, it's just natural, like Kitzrow for 3, time winding down. And so when I got into that booth, it was just as natural as could be. Now, you have to remember the Bulls were in full swing back then, 93. So I'm watching those games every week, and I'm at the gym. So it was just channeling the energy of the excitement of the Bulls. I actually had a poster of Michael and of Scotty dunking over Karl Malone, I think, in the booth. My inspiration was just, being in the moment as an actor, but living the fantasy that was going on here in Chicago with the Bulls.
Yeah, and that was inspiration. Look, we got a lot of great catchphrases out of that. So thank you for your inspiration. Now, it's one thing, right, to record a voiceover for a game, but as somebody who's worked on several games, including you've also done the NFL Blitz series, what was it like when you heard your voice on NBA Jam and then saw people playing it at arcades around the country?
Well, it was fun to go out and see all of my games, the pinball games, et cetera, go to an arcade. But the basketball NBA Jam was really unique because I love basketball so much. And I thought, if anything's going to be a hit, it's going to be this kind of game. But generally, games go into arcades and bars and they're gone a year or two later, except for a couple like Asteroids or Pac-Man or something. So I kind of assume like probably that's what's going to happen. Like this, I'll have a nice little run, but it'll be over. But I went to one of the arcades in Chicago. There was one game called Run and Gun by Konami, and I listened to that. There was like two guys playing it, and the announcer was going, "Nice shot. 4-2, stuffs it in." I was thinking this guy must be on lithium or something, or some kind of drug, because he just sounded medicated. And I went over to the other end of the arcade and I saw 20 guys literally around the NBA Jam cabinet screaming and yelling like you could barely even see the cabinet. And it was like Rutgers playground in New York. This was the first virtual playground. Porters on the on the machine. It's like, who's got next? People yelling, screaming, high fiving, like, "Oh man, he dunked on you!" And to see that kind of mob, it's like a '50s rock and roll thing, the equivalent for the video game industry. Because every other game has a couple people playing, but NBA Jam was mobbed all the time. So I would go up and I couldn't help but when the guys are playing, it's like, "Ugly Sean, get that stuff out of here!" Ooh, boom shakalaka. And the guy keeps looking at me. He goes, "Hey, man, you sound like the guy in the game." I go, "Dude, I am the guy." Drop the mic, walk away.
They probably didn't believe you at that time when you said that. They probably didn't believe you were the guy, but there you were there, and you were right. Those arcade machines with NBA Jam used to be crowded. I mean, you had to wait a lot of turns to get next on the sticks there, so it was definitely like that. I remember that. So that brings me to this. I had read that you made $850 in recording the voiceovers for Midway, who developed NBA Jam, as you mentioned. Considering how the game blew up, that feels like pennies, but you've also made a career off of your voice from that point. So can you talk about how being the voice of NBA Jam changed your career and how it still impacts you today, 30 years later?
Yeah, well, it's interesting right now that with the actor strike going on, there is a upcoming video game strike as well. And it just goes to show you that the talent has been underpaid for years in our industry, and the video game was the most overlooked aspect of all the entertainment industry. The video game industry surpassed Hollywood years ago as far as total revenue, whatever that billions of dollars it was, but it actually surpassed it, and yet we don't get in the voiceover industry any residuals. There's only a certain limit of money, like a double scale that you can make. So even today, that was $1 billion blockbuster, and getting $50 an hour seemed great. Maybe if you're doing a pinball game or whatever, but I always felt there should have been some sort of licensing, revenue sharing, or way to make it up. But it's never been a lucrative career. As I said, the voiceover money is not what movie and TV money is. There is no residual. It does not matter how many millions or billions of dollars a game makes. I'm actually having a second renaissance now, though, with the nostalgia factor, traveling the country, doing shows, getting new projects from people who grew up listening to my game, who are now developing games, working with the NBA, doing highlights for teams like the Warriors, the Rockets, because those people grew up playing the game, and they're bringing me in and putting me to work. So it's been a great run, and I'm the only guy in the industry who's done all 4 major league sports with NFL Blitz, NHL Hits, and MLB Slugfest, and the only talent that's written all of my own material, starting completely with Blitz and on through that. So it's been very, very lucrative creatively. Of course, I always wish it was more financially lucrative, but every once in a while, something comes in unexpectedly, and so I've been lucky to make a career out of it.
I'm glad you brought up that point, because I think it's very interesting, and I'm glad to see that you're still able to make a career off it, and the nostalgia factor has impacted you, but there should be more residuals for voice actors, and we need to help and support other creators in that fight going forward. So, Tim, since the initial game in '93, right, there have been several other editions or iterations of the game, including obviously Tournament Edition was one of the first ones which hit home consoles, NBA Showtime, and the most recent game that dropped back in 2010, that was via EA Sports, that was the On Fire Edition. When EA hit you up in 2010 to voice over that game, the On Fire Edition, what was it still like at that time being the voice of the franchise that now had been rebooted? What was that like for you, knowing that, hey, all this time later, I'm still the voice of this franchise? What was that like getting that call?
Well, that was really, really special because the producer and his whole team of 30 programmers, they just said, they grew up on the game. They were huge fans. It made me feel older, but the fact that they didn't want anyone else but me to do it. And what he said was, you can write and do anything you want. The script is yours. So although most people know me for the first version, the arcade version, if you haven't seen or played the 2010 or 2011 On Fire edition, that's where I got to really do my comedy and my Second City stuff of just anything goes. And that stuff translated into working, as I said, with the Warriors, the Rockets, et cetera. So it's kind of combining like Shaqtin' the Fool with, the play-by-play announcing. So when I worked with the Rockets, we have a ankle-breaking move by Harden. He's coming down the court. And this is a Jumbotron highlight that they put up and on their social media. And so it says, this is a limited time TV offer. It slices, it dices, it dunks in your face. Announcing the amazing Hardenizer, beard sold separately. Call now and we'll throw in this free dagger at the buzzer. Boom shakalaka. And on the side of the screen, they've got the graphics of the beard sold separately, a telephone number to call. And the next play, he does an ankle breaker on Rubio. And Rubio falls back like a crab, all both arms and legs on the ground. So we put a twister mat under him, a graphic. And I say, how about a little game of twister, Rubio? Left foot green, right foot blue. How about my hot hand in your red face? Kaboom! That's the kind of stuff I like to do. It's, although I'm known for the early stuff, it's the signature stuff that I've been doing with the NBA and with the EA Sports version that really has been the most satisfying for me as an artist and creative person.
Yeah, I love what you did with that version because you're right. I felt like more of the comedy of what you want to do, more the freestyling nature of that came out in that version of the game. Couple more for me here, Tim.
Sure.
30 years later, what do you think is the cultural impact, not just only in the video game world, but the sports world? Like, do you still connect with basketball players, young and old, who still play the game? I know I've had a recent reconnection with the game with my daughter. Are you still connecting with people, whether it's basketball players, basketball fans? How are you still connecting with people that play the game 30 years later?
Well, Dexter, there's the biggest thing that I've seen is that these retro game conventions around the country, families of all ages, and usually it's the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like young kids are drawn to the NBA Jam the way a cartoon, the colors, the fast pace, the sound. So it's a game that just keeps on going. I know that most of the players of the NBA. The last 10 or 20 years grew up with it or played it at some point, and I've met a whole bunch of them and was able to interview Clyde Drexler, James Worthy, Dikembe Mutombo, and Dominique Wilkins at the All-Star game a few years ago, and give them shout outs and call outs and some play-by-plays. They came up the stage. That was great fun. And doing the Warriors thing while the Warriors were winning championships, I was doing the highlights for every playoff round and finals round. And when they beat Cleveland, I did a roundup and said, what does Cavs serial killer Stephen Curry have for breakfast? Snap, crackle, and pop nice crisp threes. Make them a part of your balanced NBA diet. What does Chef Curry cooking up for dinner? Curry surprise. It's fast, easy to make, and a real crowd pleaser. How do you like your curry? I like mine muy caliente. Boom shakalaka. That's the stuff. When I see players light up in person when I'm doing that, I did the live lineup introduction for the Rockets, for the Wizards. That's a dream come true. And that they were kids when, that first game came out. So it's kind of like being this Santa Claus where, kids who are now grown up and 40 years old, they see me and go, I didn't think you were real, or wow, I can't believe I'm meeting you. So it's really a kind of a surreal feeling, Dexter.
No, I understand it. And this right now, just us doing the interview, I completely understand what they feel with that. Last thing for me here, Tim, EA Electronic Arts, they have the rights to the Jam franchise now. We haven't had a new NBA Jam game since 2010, 2011. I personally, and I'm saying this right here, I've been begging for a new one with updated rosters. Do you still think there is an interest in a new game? Do we need a new one? And if EA decides to produce... Okay, absolutely to that.
And unfortunately, I think that they missed a great opportunity with the 25th anniversary of Jam to do a relaunch, because we know in the last 10 years, everybody keeps talking about the big two, the big three, the big two on teams. Well, NBA Jam was all about the big two and big three. Yep. There was never a better moment to start talking about, is it Luka Doncic with Kyrie, or like who are the greatest matchups? And in the old days, there were some more obscure players, but the way now fans know all the players and all the teams, it would be great to see the current superstars in an NBA Jam. It's just not the same with NBA 2K 5-on-5. It's that 2-on-2 fast-paced, in-your-face action. I think that we need, And if enough people make noise, there have been a lot of rumors. I know that there are so many people interested in having this game come back. So keep our fingers crossed. And lastly, I think that I would like fans and people to actually get a petition going to get NBA Jam in the Hall of Fame, because there's a moment where video games and technology merged with the NBA culture that helped them grow their audience at the same time. Kids who are 5, 6, 7, and 8 aren't going to sit on an afternoon on a Sunday and watch a 2-hour game, but they'll play 5 hours of NBA Jam 6 days a week. So we were bringing so many fans in as NBA Jam, and all the players who were in the original NBA Jam. You can just see those player select screens that you see on the T-shirts, the NBA Jam T-shirts. It's such an iconic look. It's like an Andy Warhol. Imagine a Hall of Fame exhibit with Ewing and Pippen and Stockton and Malone and all the great players from Jam in these big 4 or 5 foot posters of the player screen select, with a couple of NBA Jam cabinets, including the Holy Grail Michael Jordan cabinet that has Michael Jordan in the game, and then archival stuff to say this is when video games and the NBA League met, and then it went on to 2K and this. You can show the whole evolution, but I think Jam belongs there as a touchstone moment for pop culture, for NBA culture, and for game culture.
Hadn't thought about it. NBA Jam absolutely belongs in the Basketball Hall of Fame. And last thing, Tim, if they do make a new game, because you're all for it, if they make a new game and EA reaches out and they ask you to be the voice of it, you're going to say,
"Boom shakalaka, all in, baby, the nail in the coffin."
There you go. And you also they got to pay you well and give you some residuals as you're supposed to. That has to happen as well too. That is the great Tim Kitzrow, legendary voice actor, voice of NBA Jam. Tim, I just want to say, as somebody who played this game from the time they was 10 years old, I never thought as a sports journalist I'd be sitting here interviewing you. I am honored to interview you. You are a legend. Basketball fans,
Dexter.
video game fans, we appreciate you, man. So thank you. And you got to get in the, you have to get in the Hall of Fame too.
So, yeah, thank you. Well, I if everybody loves a good dunk, and I just have to say, if you're always hungry for a good dunk like me, but you just don't like leaving the house, then download my DoorDash Dunk app today and have your dunks delivered to your door, in your face, and on fire. Boom shakalaka.
There you
with
go.
that, Dexter, great to talk with you, man. Appreciate the love.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you. Keep up the great work. We will talk again soon. NBA Jam will always live on. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, Dexter.